Yo, and welcome back to the In the Pocket podcast. I am today's host, the one and only EJ Russell. Happy to be alongside you all today. This is season 7, episode 3 of the In the Pocket podcast, presented by the Game Sports Podcast, powered by 91 and 91 Network, formerly known as TGEM. The In the Pocket segment is sponsored by SportsCenter Bar and Grill, Sioux, Ontario's best sports bar and best wings. Proud sponsor of the Game Sports Podcast, formerly the Big Game Sports Show since 2016, and the original home to the first live recording of the Game Sports Show and Game Sports Show podcast in Canada. With me today is our dear friend and El Presidente himself, David McKeag Jr. is here with us today. Kegger, how are you, buddy?
EJ, I love when you say that. I think you're one of the only ones that calls me that on this because I don't think anyone else wants to call me that.
Or Mr. Electric Avenue. We can bring that one up too.
I love that one. I was talking about it on a certain tribute show that we are going to have upcoming next week. But EJ, my friend, I am doing great. I love being on this side of the camera, if you will, because you're such a natural.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
And you lost the bet last week.
I did. I don't know what you're talking about. I won't talk about that. We'll get into that and more later, but also joining us is regular contributor and co-host of the In the Pocket segment. You know him as Hike. It is the one and only Justin Heichel. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, fellas? Good to be back this week. Nice to see you're both here smiling after that rivalry game Monday night.
Well, one of us is not smiling at all, and let's get into that real quick. Nick Chubb goes down, likely out for the season. Today it comes out as we're recording this show on Wednesday. It came out earlier today that Nick Chubb has agreed to a one-year deal with the Cleveland Browns worth up to $4 million. Dave, your thoughts on how this Nick Chubb injury could affect the Cleveland Browns, and talk about the way that Pittsburgh looked in that game.
You mean Kareem
honestly, Hunt? That's a Kareem Hunt is
what I say?
It's okay. I caught it. I know what you meant.
Did I say they signed Nick Chubb?
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, no, Nick Chubb's got a bigger deal. Sorry, Kareem Hunt, 1 year, up to $4 million. I know what I'm talking about.
They re-signed Nick Chubb's knee.
I think you gave the listeners Chubb thinking that they were having a Nick Chubb clone getting re-signed. Okay, so
that'd be great.
But honestly, I think Hunt is a good replacement to come in. I'm not surprised. I thought maybe they'd make a move for K-Makers, but we know that he went to Minnesota. I believe that's where he went today. Sorry, cut my head. I didn't fact check that by any means. But you asked me about the Steeler and Brown game. Honestly, that game was so hard to watch if you're a fan of offensive side of the football, because football you look at the offense that the Browns have. I'm impressed with it because of Chubb, and that's a massive loss. But you got Cooper, you got Watson, you got some good names. The Steelers have good names too, but they're not up to the capability of what the Browns have, to be honest with you. And Kenny Pickett, defense ran that football game, and Highsmith and Watt took the game to a whole other level. And Watt breaking a record and most sacks, and the guy is literally just a menace on the field. He's great to watch, and I might have to get myself a Watt jersey now. But overall in the game, EJ, what I saw was two actions of offense that were non-existent, and defenses that were actually pretty existent. And obviously on the Steelers side, they got 2 touchdowns on the defensive side of the football. So that's one thing that stood out in the game, and it's obviously a big loss for the Browns, though, losing Chubb. When I was watching that and I saw that, I was like, oh no, that was a scary kind of collision that happened there with Chubb, and unfortunately he goes down. But I think the Browns have enough high octane offense with Watson and Cooper and bringing in Hunt. I think they can rebound, but that's a tough loss to take against the Steelers, a team that has proven that the steel curtain is not back by any means, but it's looking really good when you have Highsmith and Watt and guys leading the way. So it was a purely defensive, exciting game, but nothing exciting about the offense.
Heichel, your Indianapolis Colts this week getting a victory 31-20 over the Houston Texans. Your thoughts on the Colts and getting the dub?
I like the win. I like Richardson's 2 touchdowns. I think this being pulled from 2 games back-to-back is giving me PTSD from the Andrew Luck years. I mean, Trevor Lawrence told him after game 1, man, you got to learn to protect yourself. And if there's anything we learned from game 2, he's got to learn to protect himself a little better. I mean, it's only 2 games into his NFL career, so I mean, I'm not trying to hit a panic button by any means, but game 1 you get pulled because it looks like you take a rough hit to the knee. Game 2 you get pulled because you're in concussion protocol. I love the heart. I love how he's playing. But you do have to learn to protect yourself a little better. And I guess maybe the only way he's going to learn that is by getting his bell rung a couple times. But onto the positive side, Gardner Minshew stepped in, and it honestly looks like they have 2 different offenses. Like they have a playbook for Richardson, and then they've got like a playbook for Minshew to go out there. And honestly, the offense kind of reacts solid both ways. And getting Zach Moss in there this week at running back gave me a little bit more confidence in the running game. I mean, week 1 with Deion Jackson, I mean, I bet hard on him in fantasy this year, kind of thinking he's going to be the guy, and he's not the guy so far. But Zach Moss, I think, pulled in a big 18 points over the weekend for me in fantasy. Not to brag on that one on the waiver wire, but I'll take it. And going into this week with Baltimore, it's going to be a toughie, but I think if Richardson's back, it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Dave, outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers, were there any other games that really caught your eye this weekend? I'm really impressed with the way that the Cowboys have looked through the first 2 weeks, that they're scoring a lot of points. That defense looks nasty. Micah Parsons, you even see him stealing things that he saw Myles Garrett do earlier in this year, the way that he picks up things defensively and learns new schemes and new techniques. The Cowboys look fantastic right now. But Dave, what other game stood out to you, or what team looked best?
Honestly, you bring up a good point about the Cowboys. That's where, and I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to get to 2 other quick points to answer your question. But the Cowboys, this team looks good to watch. It's exciting. You hit the nail right on the head there. They're looking pretty solid and they're exciting. But if I had to say 2 other teams that really stood out to me this week, you know what? I think 2 teams that I'll mention, and they're closer to home, quote unquote, so that I'll say. The Buffalo Bills, obviously with playing the Raiders had a good first week, winning the first game, but obviously losing against the Bills. What we saw in this game between the Bills and the Raiders was kind of the offense of the Bills and just the overall team effort really kind of rebound from the first week, right? You watch that first week game and you're like, shit, all right, Rodgers, the Jets, pull away and get a win, and then you have the Bills go back and bounce back at home, right? And the Raiders they were down 21-10, I believe was the score when I was flipping back and forth going into half, and then the second half they didn't get any points, if I remember correctly, because the Bills won 38-10, so do the basic math, I guess. But the Bills were the team that looked good. They looked good all around that entirety of the game. But the other team, the close to home that I want to point out, obviously being in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and a border town with Sault, Michigan, and connecting with a lot of Lions faithful, and there's a lot of Lions fans where myself and Justin live, and obviously, of course, where EJ is at as well. But the Lions, people are already saying, "Oh, first week was a fluke." Wow, they look like garbage. Goff throws his first interception since week 8 or whatever of last season, or whatever it was, week 7 or 8. So. And they have a bad game against the Seahawks. And the Seahawks, they've said, well, they got touchdowns at timely times. There's Goff didn't look the same. There's criticism now saying that, oh, maybe they're not as good as what they thought. Listen, Lions fans, you got to take a step back here for a second. All right. Goff did very good last year towards the end of the year. They had a great first game. The Seahawks figured them out. It was a back and forth game, and the Lions fans got to take a chill pill. Man, that's the word I want to use. The stuff that I've been reading, I understand football is not as long as a hockey season. It's not as long as a basketball season. It's not as long as a baseball season in particular as well. Okay, each game counts a little bit more, obviously, in football, it seems, especially when you're playing teams that, quote unquote, they think that they should win against. Listen, the Browns should have beaten the Steelers last week. It doesn't really matter. The Chiefs played the Jags last week. The Jags are a pretty good team, so I don't mean to take this away from them, but Chiefs only got 17 points on the Jags. They should be getting more points with that offense, in my honest opinion. you have a Lions team that the Lions faithful really have to take a step back and relax here a little bit and watch the comments online, because I think the Lions are going to come back this week and bounce back. Spoiler on one of my picks. But Restore the Roar is still there. And the stuff, EJ, that I'm reading about the Lions, that's one team that stood out to me in a negative way. But at the same time, I still see a much improved ball team on the field than from week 6 of last year. They're still a team that's going to be competitive on the field the entirety of the season. This is only the second game. If we're talking week 10, and you're playing 500 football, then maybe that's where you get a little concerned. But I think there's a lot of time for the Lions to keep restoring the roar there in Detroit.
Heichel, your surprise team so far at this point, 2 weeks in.
Surprise team? I would say probably the Washington Commanders, to be completely honest. I don't think anyone gave them an absolute hope in hell going into this season. With the change in ownership, not really knowing the direction of the team, I don't think many people are going to give Sam Howell a lot of credit or much of a chance before they wrote him off going into the year. But I think, honestly, maybe the team's playing to that mentality where they're a bit disrespected, underdogs. I mean, Brian Robertson's a pretty solid guy. Scary Terry's out there. I believe he's been back pretty good. So they're not a bad club, and their defense has been pretty okay. I don't want to give them like too many accolades here and hang championship banners for them, but honestly, like that's if you were going through the stats right now, and like if you read what everyone was telling you going into the season, and then you just looked at the the standings right now, Washington has to be the team that stands out to you. I mean, that's at least maybe other people knew something I didn't, but I didn't give them a hope in hell. And I mean, to touch on that a little bit too, the surprise team in that division for me, just to jump off of that a little bit, like the New York Giants, I had a lot more faith, like going into the season with that team than what we've seen so far. I mean, week 1 was an absolute like shock and awe disaster. And then last week, so like funny story here, it's my sister's wedding Sunday. Ceremony started at 4. And my buddy's like sitting 2 rows behind me, biggest Giants fan I know. So we get through the reception, we're down there eating apps and everything else, and I look at the score, I'm like, yo, it's 17-0. He's like, nice, right on. I'm like, oh no, not nice, right on. And then like we finished dinner, everything else, and then we have the movie or like the moment, like those gambling ad commercials where Jamie Foxx yells up in a room full of people like, oh my god, way to go. And that was him, because the Giants won the game.
Isn't he high-fiving like Vanessa Hudgens or something weird in that commercial?
So, yeah, it's something like very uncommon. Like Jamie Foxx has a gambling problem. You got to get that figured out. But
Zac Efron's ex, Vanessa Hudgens.
But yeah, like that whole division again is a mess. But I want to revisit the Washington Football Club here again. Like after Canadian Thanksgiving, we'll give it a look there in like 3 weeks and see where they're at.
Now, we are into week 3 of the regular season, so 2 weeks of Pick'em has commenced. So, Hike, I'll come to you to give us the breakdown on the standings on where things sit in our NFL Pick'em after 2 weeks.
Well, we are very taut. It's a 3-point spread across the league right now. My Chubb is miles long, still in first. But only 10 correct last week, so he in first with 22
Well, it's because my Chubb blew out his knee, so we got big problems now.
Get a new Chubb.
Yeah,
if they amputate his leg, I'm gonna have to say my Chubb is half miles long.
No, your Chubb is broke. That's it.
That's
Yeah. All right,
My Chubb is broke.
Dave's teams, whose name is to be decided at this point in the season, is in second place with 21 points. Dave won the week with 11 correct. So props to Dave on that one. And then I'm holding up the rear there with 19 points, and I only got 10 right on the week. So EJ and I tied on the week there. We'll maybe segue that into our week 3 picks here, fellas.
Yeah, and I'll go first because I often end up going last. as I typically win most every week. But Dave will have the honors to go last, so I'll go first. Hike second. Dave, will let you bring up the rear because we know that's where you like it. So first pick, I'm going to go San Francisco 49ers over the New York Giants. Saquon Barkley, not the healthiest person right now, so give me the Niners. They've been playing great football. The Browns, I think they still bounce back. I think that Ford kid that came in after Chubb went down, I think he's still a very capable running back. Again, Kareem Hunt coming back. I think the Browns are playing for Nick Chubb the rest of the way, and it's going to be a perfect motivation for the rest of the season. No better guy to play behind. I got the Detroit Lions taking on the Atlanta Falcons in what I think will be a closer game than a lot of people want it to be. I do think Detroit comes away victorious there. Give me the Packers over the Saints at home. Finns, they're winners at home against Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, and the Denver Broncos. Give me the Chargers against the Minnesota Vikings. I like them being road dogs here, getting the win in that game. New York Jets, I have beating the New England Patriots. I like the Jets defense in that game to perform and play significantly well. Sorry, Washington, I think your ride's going to come to a quick end here as the Buffalo Bills are going to be victorious on the road. Jaguars defend home turf against the Texans. The Ravens will beat the Colts. But I think that's another game that will be closer than many people anticipate. I think the Ravens' defense being the deciding factor in that game. Seahawks over the Panthers, Chiefs over the Bears, Cowboys over the Cardinals. And we were talking about this game before the show started. Hike, you know what I'm getting at here. Raiders, I think they're going to take down Pittsburgh at home. Eagles over the Buccaneers. I think Baker Mayfield comes back to reality in that game really quickly. And then the Bengals, I think they're going to pick up their first win of the year and take down the Los Angeles Rams at home. Rams 17, Bengals 24 for my tiebreakers. Eagles 27, Buccaneers 10. Who will score the most points? The Cowboys least, Arizona Cardinals. Hi.
Sorry, I was on the mute button there. And I'll. All right, so
He was booing you, EJ. He was booing you.
I was booing.
I didn't need to hear it. I didn't care to hear it. I'm going to pick the game the way I pick it, whether you like it or not.
So Al Michaels gets another killer game on Thursday night. The 49ers and the Giants. I'm taking the 49ers. Anyone taking the Giants, go get your head reevaluated. I don't know what you're thinking. Cleveland over Tennessee, Lions over the Falcons, New Orleans over Green Bay, Miami over Denver, Minnesota over the Chargers, Jets over New England, Buffalo over to Washington. Sorry, Washington. I was on the hype train there, and here we are now. I'm slighting you. So prove me wrong. Jacksonville over Houston, Colts over Baltimore, Seattle over Carolina. Carolina, like, awful to watch on Monday night. Like, different story.
Why did they do two games on Monday night, by the way? That was just a waste. Why give us the appetizers, Saints, Panthers, when we all knew the Panthers were going to be dog shit?
Well, why are they doing it again this week? Why are there two games Monday night? Is that just so people can get like some bigger parlays going? Is that only a gambling thing?
It must be. I don't know.
So Kansas City over Chicago, Dallas over Arizona, Pittsburgh over the Raiders, Philly over Tampa Bay, Cincinnati over the Rams. I got the Rams 21, Cincinnati 24. I'm thinking that's going to be a fairly close game. The Rams haven't been awful. They're the spread destroyers now, so that'll be interesting. Philly 38, Tampa 24, only because Tampa scores in garbage time. Most points this week, Dallas. Fewest points this week, the Giants. Dave.
The least. Okay, so I'll say first, Hike. There's an alarmingly similarity with a lot of our picks between you and me, and even us three have pretty linear picks on a lot. There's a lot of, I think, favorites.
It's not going to start to separate until about midway through the year, because right now we're all picking favorites for the most part.
Yeah, then I start playing fast and loose, and it's a mess.
Real loose. Your Chubb gets half miles long. Sorry, I don't know why that's in my head.
It's a Canadian Chubb. Don't you do it in centimeters or meters or kilometers?
Yeah, kilometers.
There you go.
Goosenecks.
Well, with Hike, it's millimeters.
Awesome. Okay, so
Awesome, Dave says.
Awesome. I want all that. The Niners will beat the Giants. That's all. Browns over the Titans. Lions over the Falcons. My point, very hard to pick this game. Okay, it was very hard. And I'll tell you why. The Falcons got a very good running game. They have a weapon in Kyle Pitts that they haven't really utilized like they should. My fantasy knows. But the Lions, I'm going to pick them just based out of bouncing back and then being on home field as the edge. But the Falcons running game, do not doubt that. That game is going to be one of the best games on Sunday. Packers, Saints, Dolphins will beat Packers, Saints. Wow, I can't talk. Packers will beat the Saints. Dolphins over the Broncos. Vikings over the Chargers. Jets over the Patriots. Bills over the Commanders. Jags over the Texans. I'm sorry, Justin. Ravens over the Colts. Seahawks over the Panthers. And I did actually originally have the Colts picked in my head before we hit record, but I gave it a quick change. I shook my head and realized, you know what? No. Chiefs over the Bears. Cowboys over the Cardinals. The Eagles over the Bucks. Like you said, garbage time for the Bucks. The Eagles are just going to, I think, to the Bucks this week. And the Bengals will beat the Rams. Score 31-7 Bengals over the Rams, 28-14 Eagles over the Bucks. Dallas most points, Arizona least points.
Well, unlike when Dave hosts and things get off the rail quickly, that just about does it here, boys. I think we've got it all tightened up. We got a nice bow on it. I'll end with this. Hike, I want your favorite game of the week. Dave, give me yours, and then I'll wrap up with my favorite game, and then we'll close out the show here.
Well, did I button line there? Sorry, I was not
You're
checking
good.
my fantasy hockey team at the same time.
You're up, Hike.
All right, so I'm not going to be biased here or anything, but I'm honestly thinking the Colts and Ravens is going to be a pretty juicy game if Richardson is back. It should be like young Lamar versus established Lamar. And honestly, like defense, the Ravens defense is a little bit better, but I don't know. I think it'll be a fun game to watch. I do want to give a quick shout out to my cousin, the Bills fan, and my new, brother-in-law's family, also Bills fans. We had several drinks over the weekend at my sister's wedding, and Bills fans, pretty fun to hang out with. So, Dom and Nathan's family, good time this weekend.
Did he jump through a table at the wedding? Yes or no?
No, but he did wear
Doesn't
a
count as
cowboy
a
hat.
party.
Did wear a cowboy hat. So, had a
Dave
blast.
looks confused that Cowboys fans are capable of not jumping through tables. Dave, your favorite game this week?
Sorry, to be honest, I know it's bad for video. I just got this most weirdest email, and it caught my eye attention, so I'm sorry to anybody who was probably
You're
going
not
to say,
supposed to read those ones in your junk mail.
Yeah,
They're no
I
good.
honestly, because I was pulling up the week schedule, and for some reason, my email opened up. I saw an email that made no sense. But back on track. My favorite game of the week that I have my eye on, and I've kind of already touched on it in the pick'em, is the Lions Falcons. I kind of have my eye on that game because I like the Falcons running game against an underrated Lions defense. Well, I guess they're appreciated a little bit, but I consider them a little bit underrated. And I want to see how the Falcons, if they're going to bounce back and actually use Pitts a bit more in the game. And I want to see how Goff rebounds, if he's going to start a new streak without getting an interception, and kind of how the Lions are going to respond to last week's heartbreaking is what the word that I'll use, loss, the Seahawks. I think you got a game between two teams that are on different levels right now. I think the Falcons are playing a little bit with house money, and I don't know what the way I want to explain that is, and I know Dane Handro, who's an analyst of the Game Sports Podcast at 91N, he's very adamant about his Falcons and how strong and underappreciated they are. So I'm probably going to sound like one of those people that don't appreciate them, but I feel like they're coming into this year with almost nothing to lose. And I mean that with a question mark, because no one has them as a team to be competitive as they are this year. I know when I picked them. Earlier this year, I had them, when we were talking about teams, I had them more at the middle to the bottom, right? That's where I have them. But the way their running game is, maybe they deserve a bit more respect. But that's my favorite game because I think there's a lot of storyline there, and there's the Lions need to rebound, the Falcons need to continue momentum. a running game against a team that could stop the running game, in my opinion. And you got Goff and see how he bounces back against a tough game against the Seahawks last week.
For me, the game of the week's got to be Chargers Vikings. I think these are two teams that still have a lot of question marks about where their seasons could go. The rest of the way, the Vikings certainly have looked like they've been underperforming in the first 2 weeks of the season. So for me, Sunday, 1 o'clock at US Bank Stadium or US Bank Arena, whatever it's called in Minnesota, that is going to be, to me, the game of the week. Kirk Cousins versus Justin Herbert. Great offenses facing off against each other. I think it has the potential to be a very, very high scoring game. So that is going to do it for season 7, episode 3 of the In the Pocket podcast, brought to you by the Game Sports Podcast and presented by 91N, formerly the TGM Network. Thank you so much to our sponsor, SportsCenter Bar and Grill, Sioux, Ontario's best sports bar. Dave McKeag, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Any final thoughts from you before we let you go?
Honestly, nothing really to say. What I will mention, and I want to remind listeners that there's going to be a lot of uploads. There has been this week, actually. But the boys, 2 of them on the screen, the family of the game, they're going to be taking a pretty big, heavier load the next few weeks because yours truly will be away on vacation. So In the Pocket will still be around. You'll have Top Shelf is coming back. Hike, you got the preview show coming up next week with that. So there's a lot of shows and content that's coming up.
And there's the hockey bubble burst. Boo! Dave ruined it.
And EJ and I were a part of a very special show that's going to be coming up on the 29th. Maybe people know if they do know, but that will be ready to be uploaded. And I want to thank Gaetano Gallo in advance. He's going to be kind of the main avenue in terms of posting things on YouTube, and between Hike, Alex, and Gaetano and Avery for Castos, for Spotify and Apple. So in advance, I want to say thank you to you guys. That's what I want to take this. Thank you to you guys for being able to step up for this week. But for the listeners, in terms of football, I don't got much to say, but I love the Colorado football stories in NCAA. I'm loving Sanders. That's where I want to give thumbs up this week. For me, in my 2-minute warning, Colorado. I love the storylines and the shades. Love it all.
By the way, they sold something like $1.2 million worth of Blenders sunglasses on Saturday alone after what Coach Prime did with those sunglasses and putting them on TV the way that he did. Your final thoughts before we let you take off.
Wait, those are for sale?
Yeah, blenders.com, no free ads. Yes, the gold shades that Prime's wearing that he was throwing out in the crowd. Yeah, blenders.com, no free ads.
Awesome. All right, 100% getting some.
Dave, I think that here, you know what? Instead of getting a championship belt, I want the Coach Prime shades sent to my American address. That's what I want as a victory prize. For 2 back-to-back championships, 1 pair of blenders. Come on now.
Cheaper shipping to ship to the States, to be honest.
Yeah, it is cheaper. You could probably get a deal on if you order a certain pair.
There you go. Hike, your final thoughts.
All right. So I'd like to thank The Rock for literally living in my TV the entire last weekend. Turned on SmackDown and McAfee was there, and then all of a sudden The Rock was there, and then there were several Rock bottoms. And then I was watching College Game Day, and then The Rock was there again. And then
it's like they planned it.
I know. And then I watched the Colorado game, and in the pregame, The Rock was there again. So thanks. I remembered that you're around, and I'll purchase all Rock-related things that you were hyping. But honestly, a little cheesy here, but again, super proud, brother. Shout out to my sister for getting married on the weekend, and the rest of the Heichel clan talking about fantasy football in the middle of the wedding. Absolutely love that. And no one's really going to know what we were talking about, but we were getting mangled on Czech liquor. So it was fantastic, and it was a blast. Hope you listen to the podcast sometime. And yeah, go Colts.
Again, thank you to Justin Heichel. Thank you to Dave McKeag, El Presidente, Mr. Electric Avenue himself. for the Game Sports Podcast, the TGM Network 91 and the In the Pocket segment. This has been Season 7, Episode 3. Tune in next week for Episode 4. You have been listening to In the Pocket on the TGM Network. See ya!